John Barnes from Roskell's with me in the studio today. John, good morning. Nice to see you.
Thank you.
Roskell's first edition of the copper report, looking at copper demand through to 2035. Nice place to start. What are some of the main findings here?
Well, one of the initial conclusions that we've reached from our totally fresh look at the copper industry is that actually the market is a little bit bigger than most people think. We think demand is somewhere between 30 to 31 million tonnes in terms of total consumption. So that's refined copper and the direct use of scrap by manufacturers. So yes, the refined number is more or less what most people think, but people have underestimated the use on the scrap side of the business.
Right. What are your expectations around the global drivers as far as demand for the metal?
Well, the most important aspect of copper demand is that when you look at the entire equation of all the uses of copper, more or less 90% of the reasons that people use copper are for its electrical conductivity. So 80% is directly used for its electrical properties, further 10% is indirectly used. So really, more demand for electricity means more demand for copper.
And where are you expecting this demand to come from? Is Asia going to be a big player?
Yeah, I mean, Asia, is sort of 60 to 70% of the total market. And we really see that demand in Asia is probably going to grow by 50% from current levels. So by the time we get out to 2035, it's really going to be 3/4 of total copper use is going to be in Asia.
Right. And tell me a bit more about the split here between refined and scrap.
Well, in the future, scrap is going to be more important. There's going to be more scrap arising, more scrap is going to be recovered. So certainly, yes, there'll be more use of scrap by manufacturers, both on wire rod mills and the brass mill side, and slightly less use of refined copper. But overall, scrap is going to be a bigger part of the equation in the future. It's already a bit bigger now. And certainly there's quite a big investment from the scrap industry to invest in new equipment and granulators to basically recover more copper at end of life.
I'd imagine the growth around electric vehicles, that will play a part in copper demand?
Yes, I think it's in the medium term it's going to be significant. I don't think it's really the be-all and end-all of the expectations for growth. It's difficult to put a precise number on it. There's a lot of variables you have to put into play in terms of what's going to be the growth in the number of electric vehicles, what type of electric vehicles, what's going to be the cars, what's going to be buses, the mix. But we think it could be between 1.5 to 2 million tonnes of additional copper usage over what would have been used in internal combustion engine vehicles. And it's a good story for copper because it's more copper in the cars themselves, it's more copper in the charging infrastructure to basically prepare the way for this electric vehicle revolution. And then eventually when 25 to 30% of the population owns an electric vehicle, then there's going to need to be reinforcement of the power distribution grids everywhere so that basically when you plug in your electric vehicle overnight to charge it, that the distribution grid can handle the extra load. So it's a very good story over quite a long period of time for copper.
Importantly, what about the price of the metal? This year so far been a bit disappointing. We've had the President Trump and the China issues, shall we say?
Yes, it's been disappointing. It's not what the industry was expecting. The mood in Chile several months ago was more upbeat. At that time, copper prices were $6,500 a tonne. The expectation then was that prices might be closer to $7,000 a tonne by the end of the year, but right now we're back down at $6,000. So it's not a good short-term environment to get the copper mining industry ready to begin to invest the big number of dollars that they need to generate the next generation of new brownfield and greenfield mine projects to prepare the way for the increases in demand that will be coming forward.
Well, indeed, I suppose just on that point, it's all well and good having the demand for copper, but if it's not financially viable to get the metal out the ground, then where do you go from there?
Yeah, it's a difficult equation to solve, but fundamentally, there's more copper demand is going to be coming, and it's the question of if the copper miners don't invest now, there's a risk that you might see a big spike in prices. That can be very harmful. We could see another period of very high copper prices causing substitution losses in vulnerable applications. And that's not in the industry's best interest. What we would prefer to see is copper prices remaining in a steady and affordable range between maybe $6,000 and $8,000 a tonne, a price that's good for miners, but it's also affordable for consumers. But for that to happen, we need to see more announcements of new copper projects in the pipeline.
John, good to get your thoughts. Thanks very much for coming in.
Pleasure. Thank you, Andrew.